Not all groups end up with mass suicides, thankfully, not all organisations. But the fact is that on occasions, the belief system, if it does take over people psychologically, and there is evidence for that in the literature, it doesn't happen in all religious groups, it doesn't happen in all groups that are on the cultic spectrum. But when it does happen, as with the Branch Davidians, it can have catastrophic effects on individuals and on their families.
There's a statement that Christ made 2,000 years ago. I and the Father are one. In the pursuit of truth and of God, it is designed to bring us into a being or a state of being that is in harmony with the divine. Now, if the world and everything about the world is out of kilter with God, then obviously those who pursue that are going to seem by the world to be different.
Francesca, are the problems here inherent in people taking things in the Bible literally? Because with every respect to Livingstone, Revelations is the true word of God as far as he's concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point about monopoly is absolutely right.
Truth,
we have, exactly, some people think they have an exclusive access to this divine truth that's revealed in the Bible, but the Bible is a very contradictory collection of texts.
I don't believe you believe that.
I do believe that. I do.
She's an academic.
I know what I'm talking about. It's a very complex collection.
That's problematic.
Cole Morton.
I feel sorry for you.
Cole Morton. Isn't it fascinating here in Livingstone?
It really is. It's fairly clear.
I'm a guy who was at Waco.
Yes, and I would be fascinated to spend an hour talking to Livingstone on his own about what happened at Waco and the ramifications of that. I think what's really interesting in the wider debate here is that we're in a culture at the moment, a society where people on the whole, en masse, have said, look, we don't want to belong, we don't want to be part of an organisation. Even the Church of England, which is about as mild as it gets in the religious spectrum, we don't want to be part of that. And yet within that circle, there are groups that are getting bigger and bigger and bigger because they're preaching certainty. And the ones that are attracting the most attention are the ones that are absolutely giving you certainty. Now, I understand that because as a teenager, I embraced a group that was absolutely about certainty. And some days I'm nostalgic for it, frankly. I wish I could go back and know exactly who I was and what I was doing.
It was a missionary group, was it? What are you missing? What's lacking now?
Wake up in the morning and you know exactly what you're doing, exactly where you're going, exactly what you believe in and what you're meant to do about it. That's tremendously liberating, actually. And I'm nostalgic for it. I don't believe many of the things upon which that was based at the time, but I'm nostalgic for the sense of purpose.
But you could say that about some of the great monotheistic religions. The precepts are laid out, you know what to do, you know how to do it. Francesca, you're nodding.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not really that easy. I mean, I've got a faith with absolutes in it, and there's a theology around it, but I don't wake up every morning feeling completely purposeful. And I think
perhaps you want to look for another one then.
Can I answer that?
Yeah, of course you can.
I just signed up for a course at Holy Trinity Brompton's theology course because I'm a pastor. I've got a congregation of 165 people.
For the Unification Church of...
And, I haven't got any formal theological training, so I can see a lot of the things that the established church has done and is doing are things that, I don't have in my organisation, and I think there's a lot for us to learn from the established faith, and I think there's things from the established faith to learn from the newer faith. And I think,
of course,
we're sitting here like in the Houses of Parliament, with a line down the middle, and I think God, a personal relationship with God is too precious and important for us to start playing power politics with his name and start...
When you talk about power politics, I hope you won't think me impertinent, but the Reverend Moon has been accused, your founder, of being the ultimate sort of power junkie because he saw God, he saw Jesus, or was it an angel?
He had a personal experience of Jesus around Easter when he was a Sunday school teacher, as a teenager.
And Jesus told him the truth that he had to relate to the rest of the world.
He had a conversation with him, and from that various revelations came out.
And from that various revelation he became a very wealthy man, didn't he?
The movement's a big worldwide movement. He's personally not a person of wealth, I don't think, no. That's one of the, the Archbishop of Canterbury is much richer in terms of the body and size of his organisation, so I think that's a really unfair...
and the Reverend, when he had children, the Reverend Moon and his wife, his children were the first children ever to be born without original sin, is that right?
Well, mean, see, I didn't come on a program to have people sit behind me, snigger at me.
People need to understand the beliefs.
Yeah,
people need to understand the beliefs.
But, you know...
Answer the question.
Well...
His children were the first to be born ever without original sin.
We have a theology...
3 of them committed suicide, no?
Sorry?
3 of the kids committed suicide?
We have a theology about the message that he got from Jesus, that Jesus asked him to continue his work, that he went a path that, you know, if you want to study it, you can study it, that was an incredible path, and he has a vision to create the family that was lost.
Children who are without original sin, and he kicked that off.
But children, you know, people have their own responsibility. His children are far from perfect. There's been lots of mistakes, and, you know, our movement is far from perfect. I don't hold my movement up to be the answer to you know, world salvation, but I think our faith has a lot to contribute, and I think if we could get away from a bit of the antagonism, if I could, you know, have a bit of time in Starbucks with Ian, like our friend over here does with his friends.
You're on.
Okay.
We'll meet.
I mean, I've been leading the last 4 years the unification movement in the UK, and one of my main policies has been transparency. You know, I put all our accounts up on the web. I put my own wage up there. I put, you know, all the things, and I think if we get a bit more transparent with each other and really know what each other's lives are like. You know, when I walked into church this morning, the girl from my music team told me about an illness her father has, and because I could see she wasn't so happy. So you know, that's what real people in real religions are dealing with. Communities, families, helping people to grow, helping people to change their lives so that they can be happier. And
does that extend to a duty of care to every single member of your organisation? Because like Ian, I've spoken to countless ex-members of the Unification Church or movement who talk of being isolated from their families, talk about the way in which the church took over their lives, the fact that if they try and leave, people try and... well, countless examples. Over many decades. If you're saying...
In the last 10, 20 years?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah?
Now, if you're saying your movement's reforming, that's a great thing. And if you're looking after all of your members, in that case, would you allow psychologists such as myself to actually work with your organisation to test whether members are actually functioning healthily, like all organisations?
I had an organisational psychologist.
I will go to you in a minute, Livingston. That's good. That offer's been accepted. Let's hear from people. Gentlemen at the back, what would you like to see? We've got any audience. Quick comments.
One of the things I noticed is, like, I'm an atheist, but I saw a quote by Buddha. And he would deal with all the cults, hands down. It says, do not believe anything because you see it, because it's you read it in a religious book, because religious teachers say so, and includes because I say so. In other words, Buddha said, if I say something stupid, it's stupid. Do not follow anything. Always use your own common sense, your own reason, your own sense of fairness. Do not believe anything. And in regards to truth, well, there's a TV show, it's called Mythbusters, where they go and test out things like, can a mouse scare an elephant? So get an elephant, get a mouse, and go prove every single thing you say once and for all. So there's no accepted truths. It's the same like, don't smoke because all your friends do. It's the same principle with religions. Like you said, it's just a case of size. Or is the leader dead or not?
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes. As a Muslim, we define religion as, like the rabbi did say, around the Creator. This Creator is everlasting. He has no beginning, he has no end. He's the creator of everything in existence.
Do you think Islam started as a cult?
No, it wouldn't have, because before Islam, there were other religions before.
Do you think it started as a cult?
No, I didn't, but you know that only 2 years ago, the governor of Tennessee was trying to brand Muslims as part of a cult. And I think that what we haven't discussed yet is how threatened organized religions and atheists like Francesca feel by new religions. And why do they feel threatened? They feel threatened because things are really askew, as you put it. The economy is in a total state of collapse. Global economy is doing badly. People are without work, people are without hope, and we are latching on to anything that offers spiritual guidance.
Okay, gentlemen here,
Say something, Livingston, about Blanche Davidians. One thing you forgot to mention was the sexual abuse that went on in Waco. David Koresh would come down and talk to his congregation about some of the young children he sexually abused that day.
I don't know how you can condone that. You said you haven't changed. I'd love to tell you my name. But this is... Yeah, it's on the record. Yeah, it's on the record, Livingston. He sexually abused children at Waco. I don't know how you can still say you're a pastor.
Livingston.
I didn't really come here for that.
I didn't know he was going to say it.
No, but that's the problem. You didn't come here for that. You didn't come here for that.
If you let me finish.
He has one man who says what he heard from Jesus. You've got another man who heard what he heard from Jesus. He's got another man with his own interpretation from Jesus. Will the real one please stand up?
That's why we need to look at the methodology.
Right, listen.
I wanted to come back
Please.
to the issue of cults and religion. I understand what you're saying, and I understand how you might even perceive that. But it's not as you perceive it. And here's the thing. Did you question the person that put that in your mind?
You try to tell me sexual abuse didn't go on in Waco.
No. I'm not trying to tell you that. What I'm trying to say to you...
You know sexual abuse went on there.
Livingston, let me ask you. Did sexual abuse go on in Waco?
No.
Look me in the eye and say that. No. Okay.
No. Now let me finish. No, hold on. Let me ask you another question.
I don't necessarily believe it, but he looked me in the eye and he said it.
Let me ask you a question. Did you question the persons that put that in your mind?
There are several witnesses to it. David Koresh would regularly sexually abuse young children at Waco, and he would come down to his congregation and he would talk about it.
All right.
And he said that
now, when David Koresh actually presents that with you, to you, and it turns out that your belief was
incorrect. Koresh is dead.
No, wait a minute. When he actually presents that to you, and it turns out that your belief was incorrect, are you prepared to take the consequences for that afterwards?
Yes,
all right, that's all I'm here to find.
It's on the record.
Listen, the accusations of you really, Livingston, you absolutely believe this gentleman will have to take the consequences of saying that about a man who was sent as a prophet from God. That's fascinating. Sexual abuse is often seen as, and sexual exploitation as at the very heart of many of these movements, these new religions, or some of them that have been referred to as cults by some people. And Juliana, growing up in the Children of God, you went through hell, didn't you?
Yes. I just want to take it back to the whole question that we're actually here to discuss, which is the difference between a cult and a new religious movement.
Before we get to that, for people who don't know, because you know everything about the Children of God, you were born into the Children of God. Many people watching at home might not be so well acquainted. David Berg, another man who saw Jesus, or was visited by
the standard fare. They all think they are the mouthpiece of God, and they all have a handle on the Almighty's will, and everybody sort of follows him as the figurehead of God. And so, with that...
And there was a lot of child abuse in the movie.
There's a lot of child abuse, but, it's interesting that it's not something that people go into thinking, okay, I'm going to join a cult, I'm going to, abuse children, I'm going to, do this and this and this. It's a steady conditioning that happens over a period of time. And I think there's a lot of scientific and psychological studies that have been done on the effects of groupthink, of when people are put into an isolated environment with extremist ideas or beliefs, what is possible for a normal human being to do to another human being. There have been I think everybody knows the standard, the Stanford prison test, or the Milgram's obedience test. Even Nazi Germany, what happened on a massive scale to an entire race of people, but they were doctors who were, slaughtering children. They were, people who would normally be in caring professions. It can happen to anyone, but the problem, as I see it, is that there's so much hair splitting over this idea is that, are they a new religious movement? What should we call them? Should we call them a cult? Should we call them a high demand organization? It's not. It's drawing attention away from the bigger issue, which is we need to look at the effects of what their belief system. Are they harming people? Are they harming other people in the group? Are they taking away people's liberty? Are they controlling people's information? Are they keeping people within
How old were you when you thought this is wrong?
I honestly never believed. I was never a believer. I never considered myself a member. I was born into it without choice. And there's a large demographic of children around the world born into these groups who aren't given a full picture of the world. They're only
when you saw that sexual abuse around you. As you grew up and it happened to you, why didn't you go to the authorities? Why couldn't you go to the authorities? Were you a prisoner?
Well, yeah, you're kept within a compound, very much like Waco, where you're behind walls.
Not very much like Waco.
How How do you know?
I was there.
Do you know David? I was in mine, and David Berg glorified David Koresh and called you all martyrs.
Sure.
David Berg called them martyrs?
Yeah.
Sure.
And he said that we
I'll come
probably
to
would
it.
suffer a similar fate as you.
And what about, I think this is key actually, what about the attitude to people in the children of God to those who were not? In other words, the rest of us.
Yeah, well, within these groups is very much an us versus them mentality. So, you feel justified in feeling superior to everybody else because you have the truth and you
What did
have
you
the
call
answer.
people who were not in the movement?
They were called the systemites.
Systemites?
Yeah, the police were called Romans, and people who were who we thought we could convert into the group were called sheep, which is interesting because in society there's the sheep and there's the shepherds, there's the followers and there's the leaders, there's the controlled and there's the controlling.
What has been explained? I'm sorry, what was her name?
Juliana.
What you've explained there in what you experienced, and I hope it hasn't had too negative effect on you.
Not at all.
That is not, okay, that does not characterize Waco. That does not reflect how things were with us.
I don't know the exact dynamics of what went on.
No, but what I'm saying, you made a comment. You made a comment.
Let me ask you how has it affected you?
Well, okay, for me, it's been a journey towards what I believe in my own person. But I know that other kids from my social dynamic have struggled much more than I did. And, there's a very high suicide rate. Just in the first 2 months of this year, there was 4 suicides from my group, the youngest being 16. They have a very difficult time adjusting into society when they leave. They're not given the mechanisms to adapt into society. They're generally not given a good education, certainly not a formal one that they can get a job with. They're often denied medical care. There's a whole environment where there's not enough of a transparency within these groups. There are no child protection policies in these groups, and this is where harm can happen.
You have survived.
Can we not just lump all of these groups together? Because, half of my congregation, they're all across the park at Imperial College. Everyone's moved out of living in missionary centres. Everyone's got their own house. They've got a job. They work for a bank. They're a bus driver.
Exactly the same in Aurelia.
I think.
But this is why I don't believe that we should be lumping everyone together. We need to look at the effects of particular groups, what's happening within particular. You can't say that all of them are harmful.
So we need to look
You
at the
can't say they're all
methodology.
negative.
Ian Howard.
This issue of sexual abuse has come up. Juliana has talked about that in the group she was in. I actually challenged a member, a leader actually, of that group, the Children of God, about the sexual abuse, and they said, there's no sexual abuse here.
Yeah.
Another ex-member said later, well, of course, because we didn't define it as abuse.
Yeah.
We said if we were having sexual relations with children, that was done in love, and therefore it wasn't abuse. Well,
Rabbi Shochet, what are the bad effects been? Psychologically, the brain is a very vulnerable organ, isn't it?
It is indeed. But let's be very clear. There's a lot of banter here about believing in or having monopoly on truth. In essence, logically, rationally, if you belong to any particular faith, you have to obviously believe that is absolute truth to the exclusion of all others. Otherwise, you have no business believing in that faith in the first instance. The problem is when it spills over into excess such that you then have disregard for people of other faiths and say that if you're not a member of my faith, then you are just not a good human being and that you serve no purpose in life. That's where it all goes wrong. And essentially, if you go around over here amongst this front row, when they're sitting in Waco, as far as they're concerned, unless I embrace that way of life, then essentially I'm damned to hell. Frankly, as far as he's concerned, if I don't embrace Jesus, I'm damned to hell as well. And that's where there is the problem.
Is he damned to hell?
He says you're not damned to hell. And you don't believe in the New Testament.
I do. Hang on a second. It's ridiculous. See, the thing is, we all have to recognize, and this is where we start, for me, we all have to recognize we all fail. We're all messed up people. None of us are perfect. All right? Now, I believe that the only way of having those failures covered over...
The only way?
Yeah, the only way is through Jesus.
Right.
I don't believe that Jesus is going to send me to hell if I don't believe in him. Hang on.
Answer the question.
Let me finish the sentence.
Answer the question. If I don't embrace Jesus, what's my destiny?
If you continue living the life that you live, like anyone else,
like all of us, simple life that you live.
But
I've seen you drinking whiskey.
And
I
am just as messed up, probably more messed up than the rabbi, right? In my life. But the problem is, I think that God sent out this way of mercy. So it's not God that actually sends me to condemnation. I send myself to condemnation. And God's the one that saves.
But you didn't answer my question. If I don't embrace
you can answer it. Lewis is going to answer your question, then we're going to move on to a comparatively new religion which calls itself a church but is nothing to do with God. Answers on a postcard. That's just in a minute.
Rabbi Shaked, that judgment is left to God. Not to him, not to me, not to any other human being. Even Christ says, remember Matthew 7, judge not, lest you be judged, for whatever judgment you meet, be made to you.
Or is it left to your subjective interpretation of what God said, which can be very different to his subjective
So you judge my interpretation to be subjective.
To what his interpretation
You judge my interpretation to be subjective. That's your judgment of me.
And that's why every movement and every cult and every religion should be held up to scrutiny, and if there's objective criteria by which to determine the authenticity of the faith, then great. If not, it falls down.
Everything.
But I agree with you. I agree with you.
Some people in new religion speak in emphatic terms about everything. Wait a minute, everybody. Let's move on. Let's move on, Mail. I'll get a chance to come back to you, hopefully. Right, okay. If not in this life, in the next. But John, I know that, Glenn. John, former Scientologist.
Yes.
Right. What's the leaving like?
It's a very baffling experience, particularly, and I think this may be something that defines a cult, because of the attack that you receive from the group. Because when you're expelled, you're shunned, you're disconnected.
Now let's just make it clear at this stage.
And Australians don't do that.
I want to make it clear on your behalf. We're not generalising. We're not saying all these groups are like this. We're talking about this particular
Yes, and that's
group.
great, and that's perfect. But I think what's not coming clear from what I'm hearing is people are saying here, what's happening with cults is this. And yet I'm classed in this meeting as a cult. And I'm telling you
we
now,
are identifying problematic techniques that are sometimes used, and let's further explore.
And I agree with that, and it's a valid thing. But
let's explore
clarity is important.
All right.
Could I perhaps interpose a definition?
That'd be nice.
This is from the American Family Foundation in 1985. A cult, a totalist cult, to give it a full definition, is a group or movement exhibiting a great or excessive devotion or dedication to some person, idea or thing, and employing unethical, manipulative or coercive techniques of persuasion and control.
That's the key bit.
Designed to advance the goals of the group's leaders to the possible or actual detriment of members, their families, or the community. And I'm not accusing anybody of being
I want to hear a story. I want to hear a story, and I'll come to you if I can. Right, okay. So you had to pay quite a lot of money to progress through the courses over a number of years.
I met somebody who'd given $2 million to Scientology and ended up in hospital.
And you eventually qualified, you paid for courses to progress up to 26 levels, and you reached the level whereby you were made privy to the secret.
Yes.
What's the secret?
The secret is that we're all composed of millions of little beings. We're not individuals, and so our thoughts and our feelings are confused by this. And so the idea is to extract ourselves from these clusters of little beings. Body thetans, yes.
Yeah, which came from an intergalactic war.
Yes. 75 million years ago, the centre of the galaxy.
You're channeling L. Ron Hubbard now, aren't you?
Very nearly, yeah.
So, why, just supposing, let's take a leap of imagination, just supposing this is nonsense, this thetan business, just supposing it's not true for 1 second, why do sane, rational, intelligent human beings buy it, literally, and buy into it?
Well, it's a secret. I've been a member for 7 years before this was put to me. So, I'd gone along that road for a long way. And in fact, the day that I opened the pack to these materials, I said, this is like Colin Wilson's novel, The Mind Parasites. It didn't make sense to me. But I said, I've been on this road for 7 years. I'll check it. I'll see. And I still never did feel convinced. And 2 years later,